So what I'm going to talk to you about today is about signs of change in companies, and I see that manufacturing companies have a huge part to play in the way that we address the coming decades on our planet, because there's been research done that looks at the viable and vibrant ecosystems in our world and assesses what makes the threats towards those areas. And what they've come up with is a list of 15 commodities that we trade internationally. And of those 15 commodities, there are 100 companies, only 100 companies, that pull 25% of the resource. And there is an argument internationally that consumer demand is one way to drive change, but ultimately you get a far greater impact if 100 companies change the way that they source their materials, because it will pull the rest of the market with them. Now, Resene's experience will mirror what a lot of large industrial players do internationally, and we're very small scale compared to overseas. So I use 50 tonnes of material. Every morning we get up and we take 50 tonnes of stuff from all around the world and put it in cans and send it out into the community to protect the assets that we have built and to improve the longevity of the substrates that we're using for our social infrastructure. But that's a lot of resource going out the door every single day. And when you're in our industry, you need to start looking at how you can source that more sustainably, and also what you can do around your business practices. So what we practice on our side is what we call industrial ecology. And many of you will be familiar now with your curbside recycling. I have a much bigger curb than you do. Basically, when you're moving 50 tonnes, it comes in something. And our biggest issue on site in terms of waste is around packaging, what we bring in and what we put out. And at one stage, we were moving 18 tonnes of material every 6 weeks in waste alone, just plastic waste that we were recycling. So this is what my recycling bin looks like. So we had a contractor taking this away for us, and of course, like all things in business, that changed and we had to move on. So we have looked at all our categories of waste. We look at water, our use of water and our wastage of water. We look at plastic, cardboard, wood and paint. And these slides come from a presentation done by our manufacturing manager. So within Resene, we see that sustainability is not one person's job or responsibility. It comes right across the team. So water, we came in on the weekend, and thanks for great metering, our production manager saw that the meter was just quietly ticking away. Now, he'd had a number of fights with the council over the use of our water, and he'd quite rightly pointed out, we're a water-based production plant. What do you think we're doing with it? We're putting it in the water-based plants. But he was still dissatisfied with what he saw on the weekend, so he embarked on a 4-year program to reduce our water consumption, and he halved it. And I'm actually not a big fan of some of the ISO 14001 set a target, aim for it sort of programs, because who would go out and say, I'm going to save 50% of my water usage? Nobody would set that up as an internal goal within a company. But when you set a team together and tell them the target is to save water, then they can do a huge range of things. So what this came down to in a very practical sense with some simple little changes in our manufacturing vats. So what you see here, it's not a very interesting picture to most people, is that they've moved the outlet. They've changed where the outlet is in a number of our manufacturing vats to maximise the washout and to minimise the amount of water that they need to use to wash that out. They recycle all the wash water. We take the washings, we put it into containers, and we put it back into other products. We process on site our water. Anything that's gotten through all that process or can't be reused goes back into another plant before it gets released to effectively sewerage, so we don't discharge any of our water into the local streams or community. And in fact, we were a little concerned when we made our 50% saving, sort of why two stream might dry up now that there wasn't all this water leaking. Plastic is still the big one for us. We use plastic in 240-litre drums. We use plastic in 10-litre pails. Things come shrink-wrapped in plastic. We send things out shrink-wrapped in plastic. And it's been a huge effort for us to find suppliers in New Zealand who can take the kind of plastics that we work on. And there still are issues in that area. So we're still recycling in New Zealand. We've gone from having one person who could take all of our recycling to having, I think, about 7 now that we have to use to get rid of all of our recycling off our site. So it's part of a process, and many people would say, oh, that's, that's a very difficult process, but all things in business change. There's lots of times you're renegotiating your supply contracts or where you get your materials from or using a new supplier. So in our business, it's viewed as just part of the business stream. It's not something that's separate. This is the one that got me because I went to see Ray and asked him how much cardboard and paper do we recycle, and he said it will be between 4 to 6 tonnes a week. And I was like, that's ridiculous, you just made that up. And he went through and he broke it down. We would easily recycle 600 kilos of paper in a week just from our office functions. And then we have all the cardboard packaging that we use on site. Now, this figure is after we've started practicing reverse logistics. What we have here are boxes from a can supplier. So for the metal cans that we bring down, they come down in boxes, and they are about a 25-minute drive from our site, if that. And up until about 4 years ago, they used to go and buy a lovely brand new cardboard box, fill it up with cans, put it in their warehouse, drive it for 20 minutes down to Nainai. We would open it up, take out the cans, and throw away the box. Or we'd recycle the box. And it sort of dawned on people that this wasn't the best use of one piece of cardboard. And given that there are only 25 minutes up the road, perhaps we should just send them back. So now they recycle their packaging. And the reason we started doing it with our supplier is because we'd done it for years in our own network. So in New Zealand, there are about 100 Resene colour shops, and we own 63 of them or so. And so we can require them to send cardboard back, which we do. So our packaging through our reverse logistics system comes back and it's reused. These are flat pack holder boxes for sort of 4 litre cans of paint, and those and our other packaging formats have little numbers on them that says, you know, you've got to use me at least 6 times. We have absolutely no estimate on how often they're used. We would say it's probably closer to 20. They're basically used till they're structurally unsound. So they've got tape marks all over them, they're relabeled, they're pretty ugly looking boxes in terms of what people would think of as a brand, but they're internal, they're in our shops, they're not what goes out to our customer, so we figure that it's best to go for function over form. One of the biggest things that we have done and ahead of legislation in New Zealand is look at product stewardship. So this is a big issue for us. There was an estimate that there were about 30 paint cans at home in every New Zealand shed and garage or whatever it was. And once again, I was like, oh, that sounds a bit high. And I went to my 1895 villa, and I went in, and there was probably paint cans from the last 70 years of that house life. You know, there was what the bedroom was painted in, what that bedroom was painted in before, what the other bedroom was painted in before the paint was done in. So that all accumulated over time, and there really wasn't any outlet for this. So what we did was work on patenting a collection system, because this is the big reason people didn't go out and collect paint. You had to bring it to a depot and then you had to process it. So this truck that's in the background there can take paint cans and crush them and extract the paint and remove the cans and send the cans off for recycling. It doesn't sound like rocket science, and in many ways it's not, but it had never been done before in a way that was achievable for a business. So what we have there is one of our friendly truck drivers. That's what a can looks like before it's gone through the process. That thing that he's holding in his hand, a little disc, is what's left of the can afterwards. So we had in that program taken 250,000 kilos of post-consumer metal and recycled it. We've taken 500,000 packs of paint through our stores. We've taken 60,000 litres of good paint through that program and put it back into the community. And we've taken 160,000 litres of solvent-borne paint and put that into solvent recovery or other uses. I mean, what do you do with all that waterborne paint that you can't give away, that's not good for use, or that we're not confident about? And there is a huge international query about what do you do if you start collecting paint. You know, ultimately, if you just go stick it in a landfill, what was the point in collecting it from people anyway? So we started up a program called Paintcrete that looked at the use of paint in concrete. Now, it's been used historically as an additive at 1 to 2%, but that's not going to get you through the tons and tons of paint you end up with when you start collecting it. So we looked at making stronger concrete with paint. And I have to say, this photo is from our first shoot on the site, and I always show it because it was a screaming disaster. We got the truck and everyone was very excited. They put the paint in the concrete, they poured it down, and it fell to bits. It was abysmal, and they had to dig it up and do it again because we run double B trains full of paint through our yard all day long. The learning experience was there. Somebody did their math wrong. They went back to the lab, they worked it through again, and our concrete experts reformulated the concrete and still achieve a high component of paint in it. And now our whole yard, all of our services that our delivery trucks and our stock trucks that remove our product from our site come in on is all Paintcrete. And so it's really about being committed to the learning processes. Like any other part of a business, you're going to get it right some of the time, first time, and other times you're going to have to keep working at it. And keep working at it is a lot of what the staff in Resene do. So we have a very efficient marketing manager up in Auckland, and she constantly works on the packaging ideas and different ways in which we can improve our recyclability. We're looking at post-consumer recycling now, which will be another world first, taking our pails. So we get a lot of users of our pails. If you've been to the Wellington Zoo, you'll see that they have our pails for feed, stock and things like that. One of the conversations I've had in my time at Resene is someone came to me and said, you should make your pails a bit crappier. they last too long. And I was like, well, how do you figure that? It's like, well, then they'll break and then people will throw them away. Whereas our view has always been we want to make an excellent container for our paint. We want it to be well used while it's out in our marketplace and being used for paint. And we're very happy for people to reuse it afterwards. We would rather make something useful for its entire life than something disposable. So these test spots are currently recyclable in some parts of the country, but they're being redone to make sure that they can be recycled throughout New Zealand. This is our biggest problem at the moment. We get titanium dioxide in 500 kilo bags, and we can't recycle those at the moment. And so we do continue to talk with our supplier about what other options they could have for sending us this packaging. It comes from the US and from other parts of the world, and we're also always looking out for opportunities to recycle it. If you've got any great ideas, we're taking them. We also have an issue with our drums that we can't get rid of all of them, and we're starting an initiative within our industry to look at recycling and reuse of all of our packaging materials, because our suppliers and other paint companies have exactly the same issue. The last part of what we've been doing lately is around innovation. So we won a $1 million grant to do a research project with industrial research here in Wellington, and the proposal that we put to them was to change the binder in paint and to take it away from the acrylic stream, which is basically reliant on gas and oil reserves, and to look at a renewable source, a non-cropping resource, which you could use for making paint out of. And so that project is now about 90% of its way through the budget, and we have samples up in a beta stage up in the US, looking to see if we can get them to the next stage. But it's really about the commitment to looking broader at your industry and your business. We have been in business for 65 years next year, and we intend to be in business for another 65 years, and we cannot presume to do our business the way we have done it in the past. And that's what the Resene signs of change are to date.